this is what Biden is asking for. These are the Biden challenges. Peace in Ukraine only if the Russians leave Ukraine. The US is simulating war with Russian army in Europe. Ambiguous messages from the West for the next day in Ukraine. The position that the war in Ukraine will end as soon as Putin withdraws his army from the Ukrainian territories was expressed by the President of the United States, Joe Biden, shortly before boarding the presidential plane that will initially take him to Egypt for the COP27 Climate Summit Change, and then to the G20 Summit to be held in Indonesia, November 15 and 16. This is a statement that further complicates the assessment of the West's attitude towards Ukraine and the negotiation scenario, especially after Russia's decision to withdraw its army from the city of Kherson, the only major city that had managed to dominate since the beginning of the invasion. But there are ambiguous messages. And while Biden publicly claims that unless Putin and the Russian army, the military, back down, the war is not going to end, which is a scenario with little chance of happening, the British newspaper The Times reports in an article today that the US is encouraging the Ukraine to take advantage of the Russian retreat and withdrawal from Kherson and use this development as a means to restart negotiations with Russia. American general, the G20 summit is a window of opportunity, he said. The top American general, Mark Milley, is on the same wavelength, who argued that the G20 summit is a window of opportunity for leaders to discuss how the war in Ukraine could end. Indeed, the issue of the Ukrainian crisis is expected to occupy the discussion on the sidelines of the G20 summit to be held in Indonesia, although President Putin will not be present there, as Russia will be represented by Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov for some reason. U.S. war simulation. And while Milley speaks of a window of opportunity, the U.S. is moving forward with joint exercises with the military forces of Great Britain and Australia in the Mojave Desert, during which they stimulate operations against Russian troops in Europe. In particular, it's reported that 450 British troops, including the elite Ranger unit, have moved to California to participate in a 14-day exercise at the Fort Irwin military base to practice combat operations in the open landscape of the desert that refers to the Ukrainian steppes. In these exercises, American, British, and Australian soldiers will simulate battles during which they will fight Russian forces on European soil. That's a simulation. Tests of drones and missile systems. Of great importance in these simulations are reconnaissance drones, which have been adapted in such a way that they operate flawlessly in desert conditions, but also the British guided missile launch system of GMLRS family, through the directions given by the American bomber's F-35. It's even reported that the war scenario simulates battles that refer to both a land battle in Europe and a conflict on an island in the Pacific, which, if nothing else, refers to the case of China-Taiwan. The military is paying particular attention to the changes that have taken place in the strategy and tactics of modern warfare due to the increasing involvement of drones, and as pointed out, Western armies will have to adapt quickly to the new realities that the exigencies of war have created. Scripts involving Facebook and Twitter. The exercise takes place in a training center which occupies an area of approximately 1.6 thousand square kilometers. In it, realistic models of settlements and other infrastructure facilities have been erected in which Russian speakers actually live. The communications between them is even carried out via the internet, while, as it is mentioned specifically for this exercise, social networks, Twitter and Facebook, were also created, through which, and based on one of the many scenarios, mass disturbances are organized due to their mistreatment by American soldiers who then have to suppress performances. Experimental practices. Among the experimental practices being developed is the use of 3D printing to produce spare parts for military forces in the field, as well as the use of digital processing technologies for large amounts of information collected by drones that are necessary for decision making. It's estimated that similar training exercise will take place in 2023 in Europe as well, with Germany or Poland being some of the countries that could host such an exercise. This is from Banking News Greece, and I've translated this for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.